We all agreed. "You're not welcome at the wedding," my mum said, her voice cold as she delivered the family's verdict. What she didn't know was that I'd already discovered their 20-year secret, and I'd be attending my sister's wedding. Anyway, with evidence that would destroy our family forever. I still remember the exact moment those words shattered what little was left of my relationship with my family. If you've ever felt the sting of rejection from the very people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, you know that hollow feeling that settles in your chest. I'd love to know where you're watching from, and if you've ever experienced family betrayal like this. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how I uncovered the decades-long lie that changed everything, and how karma finally caught up with the people who tried to erase me from the family narrative. My name is Ellie Morgan, and at 28 years old, I thought I understood my place in my family. I was the disappointment, the afterthought, the one who never quite measured up. My younger sister Madison, on the other hand, was perfection, personified, at least according to our parents Diana and Robert Morgan. From the moment Madison was born when I was 3, the pattern was set. She had the blonde curls and blue eyes that matched our parents, while I had dark hair and hazel eyes that always made me feel like the odd one out in family photos. As a graphic designer working for a small agency in Boston, my career was cute, according to my mother, while Madison's job as a pharmaceutical sales rep was impressive and ambitious. "Ellie, honey, why don't you let me take you shopping for some professional clothes?" my mother would say, eyeing my vintage dresses and colourful tights with distaste. Madison's company just gave her another bonus for exceeding her sales targets. She could give you some career advice. These comments were constant, like water dripping on stone, wearing away at my self-confidence over the years. When Madison announced her engagement to Jackson Williams, a 32-year-old real estate developer from one of Boston's wealthiest families, my parents were ecstatic. The wedding planning immediately became the centre of every family conversation. "Can you believe our Madison landed Jackson Williams?" my mother whispered loudly to her sister at our monthly family dinner, not caring that I was within earshot. "His family owns half the waterfront properties in the city." I smiled and congratulated Madison, genuinely happy for her despite everything. That's the thing about being the family scapegoat. You learn to celebrate others' happiness even when your own accomplishments go unnoticed. Growing up, the contrasts between how we were treated were impossible to ignore. When Madison needed a new winter coat, she got a brand new one from Nordstrom. I got her hand-me-downs, even though they were often too small since I was taller. When I made honour roll, my father nodded and said, "That's what we expect." When Madison did the same, there was a special dinner celebration and presents. For my 16th birthday, I received a used Chevrolet with 120,000 miles on it. "It's practical," my father said. "You should be grateful." For Madison's 16th, she got a brand new Volkswagen Beetle in her favourite colour, complete with a giant bow on top, and a professional photographer to capture the moment for Instagram. I tried for years to understand why. I asked my grandmother once when I was about 14, "Why do Mum and Dad love Madison more than me?" My grandmother Margaret looked startled, then sad. She patted my hand and said, "Oh, Ellie, sometimes parents just connect more with certain children. Madison needs more support. She's more fragile than you. You're strong." Being labelled strong meant I was expected to understand, to accept less, to not need the attention and validation my sister received in abundance. I internalized this message and became exactly what they expected: independent, self-sufficient, and increasingly distant. Still, I tried to maintain connections with my family. I showed up for every birthday, holiday, and special occasion. I helped my mother in the kitchen while Madison watched TV with Dad. I remembered everyone's favourite desserts and special dates. I was trying to earn my place, not realising that in healthy families, your place at the table isn't something you have to earn. Last Christmas was particularly telling. When it came time for family photos in front of the tree, my mother arranged everyone carefully. Madison and Jackson in the centre, of course, Mum and Dad on either side, Aunt Sarah, Uncle Tom, and the I, cousins on the ends. When I asked where I should stand, my mother blinked as if just remembering I was there. "Oh, Ellie, could you take the photo for us, dear?" After several group shots, I asked if we could get one with me in it too. "Oh, we have plenty now," my mother said, already walking away. "Maybe next time." Later that same evening, I found myself seated at the kids' table at 28 years old, while Madison and her fiancé were given the places of honour at the main table. When Madison opened her gifts, she received designer handbags, jewellery and weekend getaway vouchers. I had spent weeks designing and creating a custom illustration of Madison and Jackson based on their engagement photo, professionally framed. "Oh, this is unique," Madison said, barely glancing at it before setting it aside to coo over the Kate Spade purse from our parents. That night, driving back to my apartment, I saw the illustration I'd worked so hard on left behind, leaning against the garbage bins in the driveway. Despite it all, when Madison announced her engagement, I genuinely congratulated her. When she showed off her enormous diamond ring, I admired it sincerely. When she talked endlessly about wedding plans, I listened attentively. Because that's what family does, right? They show up, they care, they celebrate each other's happiness. I just didn't realise yet that in my family, those rules only applied to everyone except me. 6 months before the wedding, Madison held her engagement party at our parents' lake house in New Hampshire. I spent the entire week before helping my mother prepare, arranging flowers, addressing envelopes for the formal invitations, and setting up the outdoor tent and string lights. The night of the party, I wore a simple blue dress I'd saved 3 paychecks to afford, wanting to look nice for the family photos I assumed would be taken. Madison arrived fashionably late, resplendent, in a white designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Ellie!" she air-kissed near my cheeks. "You look comfortable. Thanks for helping Mum set up. You're always so good with the behind-the-scenes stuff." Throughout the evening, I was introduced as Madison's sister, or sometimes just the sister, never by my name. When speeches were made, my parents gushed about how Madison and Jackson were meant to be, and how they'd never seen a more perfect couple. Despite helping plan the entire event, I wasn't asked to speak. After the party, I helped clean up while Madison and her friends continued celebrating at a downtown bar. My mother patted my shoulder as I washed crystal champagne flutes at midnight. "Madison is just so busy with wedding planning," she said, as if that explained why I was the one staying late to clean. "She has so much on her plate." In the weeks that followed, I started noticing social media posts from Madison's friends about receiving their Save the Date cards. Beautiful cream-coloured cards with gold foil lettering announced Madison Morgan and Jackson Williams are tying the knot, followed by the wedding date and location, an exclusive vineyard on the North Shore. 2 weeks passed, 3, a month. No card arrived for me. I told myself it must have gotten lost in the mail. I even checked with neighbours in my apartment building to see if it had been delivered to the wrong unit. Nothing. Finally, I called Madison directly. "Hey, Mads. I was just wondering about the save the date for your wedding. I haven't received mine yet." There was a pause on the line. "Oh, those? Yeah, they must have gotten lost. Don't worry about it, though. You obviously know when the wedding is. Could you send me another one? I'd like to have it for my memory box. The stationer only made a limited number and we don't have extras, but it's fine, you know all the details anyway." I swallowed my hurt. "So, June 15th at Willow Creek Vineyard, right?" Another pause. "Actually, we changed it to June 22nd. Didn't Mum tell you?" No one had told me. As the months passed, I watched from the sidelines as wedding preparations accelerated. Madison posted photos of bridesmaid dress shopping, a group of 8 girls. I recognised from her sorority days, none of whom were me. There were bachelorette party plans in Miami, bridal shower preparations, and endless wedding updates. One Sunday at family dinner, my mother casually mentioned, "We've got the final. Bridesmaid dress fittings next Saturday." I set down my fork. I haven't had a first fitting yet. My mother and Madison exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Oh, Ellie," Madison sighed. "I thought it was obvious. The bridal party is already set. We have 8 bridesmaids. It's an even number for the groomsmen. I'm not a bridesmaid. I'm your sister. It's just, my college friends and I always promised we'd be in each other's weddings. And Jackson's sister, of course. There just wasn't room." I looked around the table. My father was suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. My mother was giving Madison a warning look. "Is anyone from our family in the wedding party?" I asked quietly. "Well, Mom is my matron of honour, obviously, and Dad is walking me down the aisle. Oh, and Cousin Bethany is a junior bridesmaid." So I was the only immediate family member not included in the wedding party. My mother must have sensed my hurt because she quickly added, "Ellie, honey, you know how it is. Madison just wants her special day to be perfect. Besides," she eyed me up and down, "you'd need to lose weight for the wedding photos anyway. Those bridesmaid dresses run very small." I excused myself to the bathroom and cried silently for 5 minutes before returning to the table with a forced smile. Despite everything, I still tried to be supportive. When Madison mentioned struggling with designing the wedding invitations, I offered my professional help. "I could design them for you as my wedding gift. It would save you the cost of a graphic designer, and I could make them completely custom." Madison's eyes lit up. "That would actually be amazing. I have so many Pinterest ideas I can send you." For 3 weeks, I worked every evening after my day job, creating multiple designs based on Madison's specifications. I produced 6 different concepts, each with variations, physical mock-ups, and even sample materials from specialty paper companies. When I presented them to Madison and my mother over brunch, Madison flipped through them quickly. "These are nice, but not really what I had in mind. But they're exactly what you described," I said, pointing to her Pinterest board on my tablet. "The botanical elements, the gold foil, the typography. They just don't have that wow factor," my mother interrupted. "They look homemade." "That's because they're mock-ups," I explained patiently. "The final versions would be professionally printed." Madison handed the samples back. "I think we'll just go with the designer Jackson's mum recommended. But thanks for trying." 2 weeks later, Madison posted photos of her invitations on Instagram. They looked remarkably similar to my third design concept, right down to the custom monogram I had created. The only credit given was to the expensive stationer, who had apparently executed my exact idea. The final blow came 3 months before the wedding. I was dropping off some gardening tools I'd borrowed from my mother when I noticed a stack of formal wedding invitations on her desk, ready to be mailed. Curious, I flipped through them, recognizing names of extended family, family friends, and even my parents' neighbours. My name wasn't on any of the envelopes. I checked again, thinking perhaps mine was already sent directly to my apartment. But when I saw an invitation addressed to my downstairs neighbour, a woman my parents had met exactly once at a building holiday party I'd invited them to, I knew there was no invitation coming for me, my own sister's wedding, and I wasn't invited. I spent 3 days processing what I'd seen, trying to convince myself there must be some mistake. Madison was thoughtless sometimes, but surely she wouldn't exclude her only sister from her wedding. And my parents, as much as they favoured Madison, they wouldn't allow that, would they? Finally, I worked up the courage to call my mother directly. It was a Tuesday evening, and I paced my small apartment as the phone rang, rehearsing what to say. "Hello," my mother answered, sounding distracted. "Hi, Mom. It's Ellie." "Oh, Ellie, I'm actually quite busy with wedding preparations. Can this wait?" I took a deep breath. "Actually, no. I was at the house the other day and saw the wedding invitations ready to be mailed. I noticed there wasn't one for me." There was a long pause. "Mom, am I invited to Madison's wedding?" When she finally spoke, her voice was different, cooler, more detached. "Ellie, I think we need to be honest with each other. We all agreed. You're not welcome at the wedding." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto my couch, my legs suddenly unable to support me. "What do you mean we all agreed? Who is we?" "Your father, Madison, Jackson, his parents, we all discussed it. We think it's for the best." "For the best?" "Mum, she's my sister. It's her wedding. How could it possibly be for the best that I'm not there?" My mother sighed, the sound full of exasperation, as if I were a small child failing to understand a simple concept. "You always make everything about you, Ellie. This is Madison's special day. She deserves to be the centre of attention. When have I ever made anything about me? I asked, my voice rising. Name one time. There you go again, getting emotional. This is exactly what we're talking about. Remember Madison's college graduation? You showed up with that ridiculous red hair. I dyed my hair for a design project. It had nothing to do with her graduation. Or the Christmas when you announced you were moving to Chicago for that internship, right as Madison was telling everyone about her promotion. I was stunned. Mum, that was 7 years ago, and I only mentioned it when Aunt Sarah asked what my plans were after graduation. The point is, my mother continued as if I hadn't spoken, you have a pattern of trying to steal Madison's spotlight. She's worried you'll cause a scene or find some way to ruin her big day. Tears streamed down my face as my mother continued, listing perceived slights and failures stretching back to my childhood. According to her, I had spent my entire life jealous of Madison, trying to undermine her happiness. Madison told us about how you tried to sabotage her relationship with Jackson early on, my mother said, her voice hardening. How you told him about her ex-boyfriend at that dinner party. What? Jackson asked about our high school friends. I mentioned Ryan because they both played lacrosse. I wasn't trying to sabotage anything. That's not how Madison remembers it, and quite frankly, we believe her. You've always been jealous of her. I was speechless. Had my sister been painting me as the villain all these years? Had my parents really bought into this narrative so completely? We've talked to the extended family as well, my mother continued. Everyone agrees it's better if you stay away. That revelation broke something. Inside me, not just my immediate family, but aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone had discussed me behind my back and decided I was too problematic to attend my own sister's wedding. Mum, I whispered, my voice breaking, I'm your daughter too. There was a pause, and for a moment I thought I might have reached her. Then she said, Sometimes I wonder about that, and hung up. I sat in stunned silence, the phone still pressed to my ear. Did my mother just imply what I thought she did? It was such a strange comment, delivered with a finality that left me reeling. I don't know how long I sat there before my doorbell rang. It was Rachel, my best friend since college, stopping by with takeout as she occasionally did on Tuesdays. One look at my face and she dropped the bags, rushing to my side. Ellie, what happened? I tried to speak, but could only sob. Rachel held me as I cried, years of rejection and hurt pouring out of me. When I finally calmed down enough to explain what had happened, Rachel's expression shifted from concern to fury. That's beyond favouritism, Ellie. That's emotional abuse. They've been gaslighting you for years. Maybe they're right, I said weakly. Maybe I am jealous and don't realise it. Rachel took my hands firmly in hers. Ellie Morgan, I've known you for 10 years. You are the most genuinely supportive person I've ever met. You celebrated with me when I got promoted over you at that design internship. You've never had a jealous bone in your body. If anything, you don't stand up for yourself enough. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through photos. Look at these. Your birthday 2 years ago, when Madison showed up 2 hours late and announced her promotion. Here you are, genuinely congratulating her while your own celebration got sidelined. Or this one from Christmas, where you're literally the only one helping your mum in the kitchen while Madison opens presents. Seeing the evidence through someone else's eyes made me question the narrative I'd accepted my entire life. I don't think this is normal family favouritism, Rachel said carefully. There's something else going on here. Have you ever noticed how you don't really look like anyone in your family? I blinked. Of course I'd noticed. It had been pointed out to me countless times. What are you suggesting? I don't know, Rachel admitted. But being excluded from your sister's wedding is extreme. There's a missing piece to this puzzle. That night, after Rachel left, I made a decision. I was done fighting for the approval of people who had no intention of ever giving it. I would stop trying to earn my place in a family that had clearly decided I didn't have one. What I didn't realise was that this crushing rejection would lead me to discover the truth that had been hidden from me my entire life, a truth that would change everything. 2 months before Madison's wedding, my grandmother Margaret called asking for help. She was moving from her house of 40 years to an assisted living facility and needed someone to help sort through her belongings. "Your parents are too busy with wedding preparations," she explained, "and Madison is, well, you know Madison." So on a rainy Saturday, I drove to my grandmother's Victorian home in Salem, armed with packing supplies and a rented dumpster. We spent the morning sorting through decades of accumulated possessions, deciding what to keep for her new, much smaller apartment. "The attic is the worst of it." Grandma sighed around noon. "I haven't been up there in years. My knees can't handle the stairs anymore." After lunch, I ventured into the musty attic alone. It was like stepping into a time capsule: old furniture, trunks of clothing, holiday decorations, and dozens of boxes labelled with years and events. I worked methodically, bringing items down for my grandmother to assess. In the far corner, partially hidden behind an old dress form, I found a locked trunk. The key was taped to the bottom, which seemed odd. Why lock something but make the key so accessible? Inside were family mementos, mostly old photos and letters. At the bottom was a leather-bound album I'd never seen before, labelled simply "Family Secrets" in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. I brought it downstairs, curious. "Grandma, what's this album? I found it in the locked trunk upstairs." The colour drained from my grandmother's face when she saw what I was holding. She reached for it with trembling hands. "Where did you find that? That shouldn't have been. That was supposed to be." "It was in the trunk in the corner. The key was taped to the bottom." Grandmother clutched the album to her chest, her eyes darting around as if someone might be watching. "Some things are buried for a reason, dear." Her reaction only intensified my curiosity. "What's in it? Family photos?" "Just old memories best left in the past." She tried to sound dismissive, but her voice shook. "Would you be a dear and check if the moving company called? My phone should be in my purse in the kitchen." It was an obvious attempt to get me out of the room. When I returned, the album was nowhere to be seen. Grandmother had changed the subject entirely, asking about my work and avoiding any mention of the mysterious album. Later, as I was loading boxes into my car, I noticed the album tucked between the cushions of the couch, apparently hidden there, in haste. The temptation was too strong. I slipped it into my bag, telling myself I would return it after satisfying my curiosity. That night in my apartment, I opened the leather cover with a strange sense of trepidation. The first pages contained photos I'd never seen before. My mother as a young woman, perhaps 19 or 20, laughing with a handsome dark-haired man I didn't recognise. They looked happy, in love even. The man had my colouring, my jawline, my eyes. My heart began to race. I checked the dates on the backs of the photos: 1994, 1995. I was born in December 1995. My parents, Diana and Robert, had always told me they married in February 1995 after a whirlwind romance. As I turned the pages, the story unfolded visually. My mother with the mystery man, clearly a couple. Then photos of my mother alone, looking sad, in what appeared to be early pregnancy. Then suddenly, photos of her with my father Robert. There, wedding, their new house. But the timeline made no sense. If they married in February and I was born in December, I should have been a full-term baby. But the wedding photos showed no sign of pregnancy, and notes on the back dated the wedding as May 15th, 1995, which would make me premature by several months if Robert was my father. Between the pages, I found a faded letter, the ink barely legible. "Arrangements have been made. Monthly financial support will be provided under the conditions discussed. All contact must cease. The child will carry the Morgan name. These terms are non-negotiable." The letter wasn't signed, but a small note in my grandmother's handwriting in the margin read, "Alexander's final offer. Diana accepted June 1995. The final pages of the album contained newspaper clippings about a man named Alexander Reed, a successful businessman who had expanded his family's manufacturing company into international markets. And there, in a photo from a charity gala dated 2010, was the man from the earlier photos, older but unmistakable. The resemblance hit me like a thunderbolt. We had the same eyes, the same jawline, the same slight dimple in our left cheek when we smiled. I'd always wondered why I looked nothing like Robert or Diana or Madison. Now I knew. The last photo in the album was the most shocking. Alexander Reed at some corporate event, standing next to a young man about my age with the same dark hair and hazel eyes. The caption read, Alexander Reed and son Julian at Reed Enterprises. Annual Gala, 2015. I had a brother, and Robert Morgan wasn't my father. If you've ever had the foundation of your identity suddenly crumble beneath your feet, you might understand the vertigo I felt in that moment. Everything I thought I knew about myself and my family was a lie. The distance I'd always felt, the strange comments, the constant rejection, it all suddenly made horrible sense. I wasn't the family disappointment. I was the family secret. I'm still processing how it felt to discover my entire life was built on a lie. If you've experienced a similar family revelation, drop a comment below. I'd love to know I'm not alone in navigating such a life-changing discovery. And stay with me. The story gets even more unbelievable from here. The discovery of the photo album sent me into an investigative frenzy. If my suspicions were correct, my entire identity was based on a lie, and I needed confirmation beyond some old photos and cryptic notes. I started with my grandmother. The day after finding the album, I returned to her house, album in hand. She was sorting through kitchen items when I arrived, but her hands went still when she saw what I was carrying. You took it, she said softly. Not a question, but a resignation. I need to know the truth, Grandma. Is Robert Morgan my biological father? My grandmother sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking every one of her 78 years. I always knew this day might come. You look so much like him. Like who? Alexander Reed. She nodded slowly. You were never supposed to know. Tell me everything, I said, sitting across from her. I deserve the truth. Grandmother's story came out haltingly, decades of secrets finally finding voice. My mother Diana had been 20 when she met Alexander Reed, a rising star in his family's business, and 10 years her senior. They had a passionate relationship for about a year. Diana got pregnant, and that's when everything fell apart, Grandmother explained. Alexander was already engaged to a woman from another prominent family. A merger of fortunes, essentially. He offered financial support but wanted nothing to do with the child, with you. And Robert, where does he come in? Robert had always been in love with Diana since high school. When she came home heartbroken and pregnant, he proposed. Said he would raise the child as his own, give it his name. They married quickly, and most people assumed you were simply premature when you arrived. The pieces were falling into place. My mother's cryptic comment on the phone, the lifelong feeling of being an outsider, Madison being the clear favourite. Does Madison know? Grandmother shook her head. No one knows except Diana, Robert, me and Alexander. And now you. So all these years, the reason they've treated me differently is because I'm not really Robert's daughter. I'm just a reminder of my mother's past mistake. My grandmother reached for my hand, but I pulled away, not ready for comfort. It's not that simple, Ellie. There's more. According to my grandmother, Alexander Reed had provided substantial financial support all these years, far beyond child support. He had established a trust for me that my parents controlled, paid for our family home, and subsidised their lifestyle in exchange for their silence about my parentage. The arrangement benefited everyone, Grandmother said weakly. Alexander kept his reputation, and the wife his family wanted. Your mother got financial security. Robert got the woman he'd always wanted. And what did I get? I asked, my voice breaking. A lifetime of being treated like an unwanted obligation, of never understanding why my own parents seemed to resent me. They do love you, Ellie, in their way. It's just complicated. Madison is Robert's biological child, born 3 years after you. She represents everything they chose, while I represent a lie they've been living, I finished. I left my grandmother's house with more questions than answers. The story explained so much, yet felt incomplete. I needed more proof. I ordered a DNA test kit that same day. While waiting for the results, I researched Alexander Reed extensively. He had built Reed Enterprises into a multi-million-dollar company, served on charitable boards, and was widely respected in business circles. He had married Carolyn Whitfield, as planned back in 1995, and they had 3 children, my half-siblings. They appeared to be the perfect family in every charity gala photo and newspaper clipping. Had he ever thought about me? Had he ever regretted abandoning his first child? 2 weeks later, the DNA test confirmed what I already suspected. Robert Morgan and I shared no genetic relationship. I was not his biological daughter. With scientific confirmation in hand, I dug deeper into the financial arrangements my grandmother had mentioned. Using my mother's birthday as a password hint, I managed to access her email account. I'm not proud of the invasion of privacy, but I needed answers. In her email, I found years of correspondence with a law firm that managed the Reed arrangement, as they called it. Monthly deposits into an account in my parents' names, payments for the house, Madison's college tuition, even the expensive wedding venue. Alexander Reed had been funding my family's comfortable lifestyle for nearly 30 years, including the lavish wedding from which I had been excluded. The irony was almost too much to bear. One email exchange particularly stood out. 5 years. Earlier, when I was applying to college, my mother had written to the firm. The child is requesting funds for design school in New York. We believe this unnecessary and prefer to allocate the educational funds to Madison's graduate program instead. The response was terse. Mr. Reed's arrangement specifies equal educational opportunities for both children. Funds for E. Morgan's education cannot be redirected. Please submit proper documentation for tuition disbursement. I stared at the screen in disbelief. There had been money specifically for my education that my parents had tried to divert to Madison. When that failed, they told me I'd have to take out student loans because money was tight. Meanwhile, they paid for Madison's undergraduate and graduate degrees in full. The depth of the deception was staggering. I found other emails about my trust fund, money that was legally mine that I'd never known existed. My parents had been required to transfer control of it to me at 25, but had somehow delayed it with claims that I was financially irresponsible and emotionally unstable. Every discovery was another betrayal. My entire life had been shaped by this secret. My relationships, my self-worth, even my financial independence had been manipulated to maintain the lie. With all this evidence collected, I faced a decision. What did I want to do with this information? Did I confront my parents? Try to claim what was legally mine? Or did I want to meet the man who was my biological father, the man who had paid for my existence to be hidden while supporting his real family publicly? After days of consideration, I decided I needed to hear Alexander Reed's side of the story. I needed to know if he had truly wanted nothing to do with me, or if there was yet another version of the truth I hadn't heard. Finding his contact information wasn't difficult for someone with his public profile. The difficult part was gathering the courage to reach out to him. What do you say to the father who never claimed you? Finally, I composed a simple email. My name is Ellie Morgan. I was born on December 12, 1995, to Diana Morgan, née Collins. I have reason to believe you are my biological father, and I would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I have recently discovered the arrangement you have with my family, and I have questions only you can answer. I attached a recent photo of myself and the DNA test results showing Robert was not my father. Then I hit send, releasing nearly 30 years of secrets into the digital ether, and waited to see what would return. 3 days after sending the email, I received a response from Alexander Reed. It was brief and formal. Ms. Morgan, I would be willing to meet to discuss this matter. Please suggest a time and location convenient for you. A. Reed. No denial, no emotion, just a business-like acknowledgement. We agreed to meet at an upscale restaurant in a private dining room, neutral territory where we wouldn't be easily observed. I arrived early, my stomach in knots, and was shown to a secluded table in the back. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, wanting to project confidence I didn't feel. At exactly 7 o'clock, a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair entered. Even without the resemblance between us, I would have recognized him from my research. Alexander Reed, business mogul, philanthropist, and my biological father. He stopped abruptly when he saw me, his composed expression faltering. For a long moment, he just stared, and I saw him taking in my features, the features we shared. "You look exactly like my mother," he finally said, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't identify. It wasn't what I expected him to say. Not, "You look like me," or even an introduction. The personal connection to his own mother caught me off guard. He sat down across from me, still staring as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "I thought you didn't exist," he said, after the waiter had brought water and left us alone. "Excuse me?" Diana told me she terminated the pregnancy. That's what she said when she broke things off and returned to her hometown. "I never knew you were born." It was my turn to be shocked. "That's not the story I was told. My grandmother said you wanted nothing to do with me, that you were engaged to someone else and paid my parents to keep me a secret." Alexander shook, his head slowly. "That's not true. Yes, I was engaged, but I would have broken it off. When Diana told me she was pregnant, I was stunned but not unhappy. I asked for time to figure things out. The next time I called, her mother said she'd lost the baby and didn't want to speak to me again. "But you've been sending money all these years," I countered. "Monthly payments, a trust fund, even paying for my sister's wedding. Why would you do that if you thought the pregnancy was terminated?" He looked genuinely confused. "What payments? What trust fund? I haven't given Diana Morgan a cent in 30 years. We stared at each other, both realizing we'd been told completely different versions of the truth. Alexander called for the waiter and ordered a scotch. I asked for the same, feeling the need for something stronger than water. "About 2 years after Diana left, I received a letter from her," Alexander continued. "She said she was married now, and that I had hurt her badly. She asked that I never contact her again. I respected her wishes. I moved on with my life, married Carolyn, had my children. I never knew—" His voice trailed off as he looked at me. "I never knew you existed." "I have copies of emails," I said, "between my mother and a law firm that manages what they call the Reed arrangement, monthly deposits, a house, college tuition, a trust fund in my name that they've kept from me." Alexander's expression hardened. "May I see these emails?" I passed him my phone with the email thread displayed. He read in silence, his face growing increasingly grim. When he looked up, there was a cold fury in his eyes that made me understand how this man had become so successful in business. "This is fraud," he said flatly. "This law firm doesn't represent me. I've never authorized any payments to the Morgans, and I certainly never established a trust for a child I was told didn't exist." My mind was reeling. If Alexander wasn't making these payments, where was the money coming from? And why would someone pretend to be acting on his behalf? Alexander was scrolling through more emails, his expression darkening. "They've been using my name to manipulate you and extract money from somewhere, possibly your grandmother, given that she seems to be part of this deception. This explains why the letter I sent you after finding your mother's address was returned unopened. You tried to contact me." He nodded, still focused on the emails. "When my mother was dying 7 years ago, she made me promise to try again, to make things right with Diana. She never believed the baby had been lost. Mother's intuition, she called it. So I hired a private investigator who found Diana's address. I wrote you a letter, introducing myself, asking if we could meet. It came back marked return to sender." "I never received any letter," I said quietly. "I never knew you wanted to meet me." Alexander set down the phone and looked at me directly. "Ellie, I need you to understand something. If I had known you existed, nothing would have kept me from being part of your life. Nothing." The conviction in his voice brought tears to my eyes. For 30 years I'd believed I wasn't worthy of my family's love. Now I was facing the possibility that I'd been deliberately kept from someone who would have welcomed me. Alexander asked for copies of everything I'd discovered, the emails, the DNA test, the photos from the album. He made several calls right there at the table, speaking in terse, controlled tones to what I gathered were his lawyers. "The birth certificate," he said suddenly. "What name is listed as the father?" "Robert Morgan," I replied. "I've seen my birth certificate." "We need to check the original filing with vital records," Alexander said. "If they falsified a birth certificate, that's another criminal offence." As dinner progressed, Alexander asked about my life, listening intently to stories about my childhood, my education, my career. He seemed genuinely pained when I described the years of subtle rejection from the Morgans. "They had no right," he said, his voice tight with anger. "If they didn't want to raise you, they should have told me the truth. I would have—" "Would have what?" I asked when he didn't continue. "I would have raised you myself," he said simply. "You would have been a reed, not hidden away like something shameful." By the end of dinner, Alexander had filled in more pieces of the puzzle. He had dated my mother during a break from his relationship with Carolyn. When Diana announced her pregnancy, he was surprised but willing to take responsibility. Then she disappeared, and he was told the pregnancy had been terminated. He went back to Carolyn, they married, and had 3 children, Julian, Sophia, and Grace. "You're half-siblings," he said, showing me photos on his phone. "Julian is 27. Sophia is 24 and Grace is 21. They all shared our dark hair and features. I had siblings who looked like me. The concept was overwhelming." As we prepared to leave, Alexander asked about Madison's upcoming wedding. "I'm not invited," I admitted. "That's actually what started all of this. My mother told me we all agreed I'm not welcome at the wedding. When I started asking questions, I discovered the photo album at my grandmother's house." Alexander's expression hardened again. "The wedding that's apparently being paid for with money fraudulently obtained in my name?" "Yes, at Willow Creek. Vineyard. It's supposed to be the event of the season." A slow, calculating smile spread across Alexander's face. "As it happens, I know the owner of Willow Creek quite well. We serve on a charitable board together." "What are you thinking?" I asked, recognizing the expression of someone formulating a plan. "I'm thinking," Alexander said carefully, "that we have a decision to make. We can approach your parents privately, with what we've discovered, or, I prompted when he paused. "Or we can attend that wedding together and let the truth come out in a rather more public fashion." The idea sent a mix of dread and vindication through me. "Isn't that excessive? Ellie, these people have lied to both of us for 30 years. They've taken money they weren't entitled to. They've denied you your rightful inheritance and relationship with your biological father. And now they've excluded you from a family event that's apparently being funded by fraud. I would say a little public accountability is the least they deserve." I wasn't sure how to feel about Alexander's suggestion. Part of me wanted justice, but another part feared the fallout. "Let me think about it," I said finally. As we parted, ways outside the restaurant, Alexander hesitated, then asked, "Would you like to meet your half-siblings? They don't know about you yet, but I think they would welcome knowing they have another sister." The offer touched me deeply. "I'd like that, yes." He nodded, seemingly pleased. "I'll arrange it. And Ellie, I'm sorry. For all the years we lost. I can't get those back, but I can try to make things right going forward." As I watched him walk away, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger at the deception that had shaped my life, grief for the relationship I'd never had with my biological father, but also a tentative hope for the future. Alexander Reed was not the villain of my story as I'd been led to believe. He was quite possibly the ally I never knew I needed. Over the next 3 weeks, Alexander and I met regularly, piecing together the complex deception that had kept us apart. Each discovery only confirmed the deliberate nature of the fraud perpetrated by my parents. Alexander brought in his legal team who uncovered the truth behind the Reed arrangement. It turned out that my maternal grandfather, my grandmother Margaret's husband, who had passed away when I was 10, had set up the fund. He had been wealthy from a manufacturing business he'd sold just before retirement. Your grandfather established a trust to provide for you and your mother, Alexander's lawyer explained during one meeting. The Morgans have been drawing from that trust for years, using forged documents that made it appear the money was coming from Mr. Reed. This allowed them to take more than they were entitled to, while also maintaining the fiction that Mr. Reed wanted nothing to do with you. The birth certificate investigation revealed more deception. The original filing had listed father unknown, but it was later amended to name Robert Morgan, a process that would have required sworn statements, and paperwork that had clearly been falsified. We have enough for criminal charges, the lawyer said bluntly. Identity fraud, forgery, fraudulent financial claims, falsifying legal documents, not to mention the moral issue of deliberately keeping a child from her biological father. Alexander looked to me. It's your decision, Ellie. We can pursue criminal charges, or we can handle this privately. I wasn't ready for that decision yet. Let's gather all the evidence first, I said. I need the complete picture before I decide anything. Meanwhile, Alexander had arranged for me to meet my half-siblings. We gathered at his home in Beacon Hill, a beautiful brownstone that spoke of old money and refined taste. I was terrified they would reject me, this unexpected half-sister appearing out of nowhere to complicate their lives. I couldn't have been more wrong. Julian, Sophia and Grace welcomed me with curiosity and warmth. We spent hours discovering shared traits. Julian and I had the same analytical approach to problems. Sophia and I shared a love of design. She was an architect. And Grace and I had identical mannerisms that made everyone laugh. Dad always said he felt like someone was missing from our family photos, Julian told me as we looked through albums of their childhood. It's weird, but it's like we've been waiting for you without knowing it. As we grew closer to the wedding, my friend Rachel helped me prepare emotionally for whatever might come next. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. Once it's done, there's no going back. These are still people you've known as your family your entire life. They excluded me based on lies, I said firmly. They kept me from my biological father and siblings. They diverted money meant for me to Madison. At some point, the truth has to matter. 2 weeks before the wedding, Alexander informed me he had secured an invitation as a family friend. It turned out that Jackson's father served on a corporate board with Alexander, and when Alexander reached out expressing interest in attending the celebration of the season, an invitation was quickly extended. What exactly are you planning? I asked when he told me. Nothing dramatic, he assured me. I just want to be there to support you when you confront your parents, and perhaps my presence will add weight to the evidence. I wasn't convinced his intentions were that simple, but I had come to trust Alexander. Despite the lost years, we had formed a genuine connection. He was intelligent, principled, and had a dry humour that matched my own. More importantly, he treated me with a respect I'd never received from Robert Morgan. As we continued our investigation, we discovered more. Troubling information. My college fund, money specifically designated for my education from my grandfather's trust, had indeed been diverted to Madison. When that wasn't enough for her graduate program and the beginnings of the lavish wedding, my parents had taken out a second mortgage on their house. Most shocking was the discovery that the wedding venue, flowers, catering, and Madison's designer dress had all been paid for with the last of my trust fund, money that was legally mine. They've spent almost all of it, Alexander's financial investigator reported. The account that should have been transferred to Ms. Morgan at age 25 is nearly depleted. My parents had spent my inheritance on the very wedding I had been barred from attending. I made one last attempt at resolving the situation privately. I sent an email to my parents with some of the evidence attached, the trust documents, the falsified birth certificate, the proof that Alexander Reed had never been involved in any financial arrangement. I know the truth, I wrote. I've met Alexander Reed, my biological father. I know about grandfather's trust and how you've used that money. I'm giving you an opportunity to explain yourselves before this becomes a legal matter. The response came from my father's email, but had my mother's tone. "You've always been determined to ruin things for this family. If you pursue this vindictive fantasy, you will regret it. Madison's wedding is going to be perfect, and you will not destroy her special day with your delusions and attention-seeking behaviour." There was no acknowledgement of the evidence, no explanation, not even a denial. Just threats and the same. Accusations of jealousy they'd always levelled at me. With that response, my decision was made. I would attend the wedding with Alexander, and the truth would finally come to light. "Are you absolutely certain?" Rachel asked the night before the wedding, as she helped me select an outfit. "This is going to be nuclear." I looked at the simple but elegant navy blue dress I'd chosen, conservative enough for a wedding, but striking enough to make me feel confident. "I've spent my entire life being made to feel like I don't belong," I said. "I've been lied to, stolen from, and excluded from my own family. For once, I want the truth to be acknowledged. I want them to face what they've done." Rachel hugged me. "Then I'll be right there with you. Champagne for after? Win or lose, I think we'll need it." That night, I could barely sleep. I wasn't just confronting my parents. I was confronting the narrative that had shaped my entire identity. Whatever happened tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same again. As dawn broke on Madison's wedding day, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The time for doubt was past. Today, one way or another, the truth would finally be known. Madison's wedding day arrived bright and clear, a perfect June Saturday that seemed to mock the storm about to break over the Morgan family. Alexander picked me up in his Mercedes, looking distinguished in a tailored suit. Rachel followed in. Her own car, our backup and emotional support. "Are you ready?" Alexander asked as we drove toward Willow Creek Vineyard. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, smoothing my dress for the 100th time. The vineyard was stunning. Rolling hills covered with neat rows of grapevines, a stone manor house decorated with white roses and greenery, white chairs arranged in perfect rows facing a flower-covered arch with views of the valley beyond. Everything screamed expense and careful planning. As we approached the entrance, a security guard checked a tablet. "Names, please?" "Alexander Reed and guest," Alexander said smoothly. "I should be on Jackson's father's list." The guard scanned. His tablet, then nodded. "Yes, sir. Mr. Williams mentioned you specifically. Please proceed to the ceremony area." Rachel was able to enter as another guest's +1, a college friend of Madison's who owed Rachel a favour. We were in. We took seats near the back, not wanting to draw attention before the ceremony. I watched as familiar faces arrived. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends who had known me my entire life. None of them seemed surprised by my absence. Had they really all agreed I shouldn't be there? Or had they simply accepted whatever story my parents had told them? The ceremony itself was undeniably beautiful. Madison looked radiant in her designer gown, and Jackson seemed genuinely in love as they exchanged vows. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sadness that our relationship had been so poisoned by our parents' choices. In another world, I might have been standing beside her as maid of honour, celebrating her happiness without reservation. As the ceremony concluded, and guests moved toward the reception in the vineyard's elegant barn, Alexander squeezed my hand. "Remember, we're not here to ruin the day. We're here for acknowledgement and accountability." I nodded, but my resolve wavered as I watched Madison and Jackson, radiant with happiness, greeting guests. Did I really want to shatter their perfect day? Then I saw my mother, resplendent in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, accepting compliments on the exquisite venue and no expense-spared celebration, all paid for with money that was rightfully mine. My father stood nearby, playing the proud father of the bride, basking in approval for the daughter who was truly his, while I, the child he had agreed to raise as his own, had been excluded and erased. As if sensing my presence, my mother suddenly looked in my direction. Her face froze in shock, then quickly shifted to fury. She grabbed my father's arm and whispered urgently in his ear. His head snapped up, eyes scanning until they found me. The colour drained from his face. Before they could approach or call security, I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to steady my nerves. I was splashing cool water on my face when the door swung open and my mother stormed in, checking the stalls to ensure we were alone. "How dare you show up here?" she hissed. "You were explicitly told you were not welcome." I straightened, meeting her gaze in the mirror. "Hello to you too, Mom. Or should I even call you that, since you've treated me like a stranger my entire life? This is exactly the kind of dramatic behaviour we wanted to avoid. You're going to ruin Madison's wedding." "I'm not here to ruin anything. I'm here because I know the truth, about Alexander Reed, about Grandfather's trust fund, about the lies you've been telling for 30 years. My mother's expression flickered between rage and fear. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I know Alexander Reed never abandoned me because he didn't even know I existed. You told him you terminated the pregnancy. I know the money you've been living on, the money paying for this wedding, came from Grandfather's trust, not from Alexander. I know you diverted my college fund to Madison and kept my trust fund from me. I have documentation of all of it." She paled but quickly recovered. "You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you. Robert raised you as his own when he had no obligation to do so. We gave you a home, an education. An education I paid for myself with student loans while you spent my trust fund on Madison," I interrupted. "And speaking of Robert raising me as his own, he did a remarkably poor job of it. Constant criticism, blatant favouritism, excluding me from family events. Is that what you call raising a child?" My mother's eyes darted toward the door. "What do you want? Money? Is that why you're here? Making a scene for financial gain?" The accusation stung, but I refused to show it. "I want acknowledgement of the truth. I want an apology for the lies. And yes, I want what's legally mine, the remainder of my trust fund and anything else Grandfather intended for me." She laughed bitterly. "There's nothing left. Madison's education, this wedding, it's all gone. Then I want you to admit what you did. To me, to Madison, to the family. Never!" she spat. "I will never let you destroy this family with your delusions." "They're not delusions when I have DNA tests, financial records, and Alexander Reed himself sitting out there," I said quietly. "He's here, Mom. My biological father is at this wedding and he knows everything." The colour drained completely from her face. "Alexander is here. You're lying. See for yourself. He's wearing a grey suit sitting near the back. He got an invitation." "Through Jackson's father." My mother's composure cracked completely. "How much?" she whispered urgently. "How much to make you both leave right now before anyone sees?" I was stunned by the naked panic in her voice. She wasn't concerned about the truth coming out. She was terrified of public embarrassment. "It's too late for that," I said. "We're not leaving until the truth is acknowledged." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "I will give you $10,000 right now to walk out that door and never contact this family again." I pulled away. "You don't have $10,000. You spent all your money, and mine, on this wedding. Besides, this isn't about money anymore. It's about 30 years of lies." As we squared off in the restroom, a gentle knock came at the door. "Diana? Are you in there? The photographer wants family photos." It was my father's voice. My mother's eyes widened in panic. "Just a minute, Robert," she called, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. Then to me in a vicious whisper, "If you ruin this wedding, I will never forgive you." "You've never loved me anyway," I replied calmly. "So I don't see what I have to lose." I walked past her and opened the door to find my father standing there, his face a mask of barely controlled anger. "Ellie," he said stiffly, "you need to leave, now." "Actually, I don't," I replied. "I'm here as a guest of Alexander Reed. Perhaps you remember him, my biological father." The blood drained from my father's face as he looked past me to where Alexander was now visible, mingling with guests near the bar. The resemblance between us was unmistakable from this distance. "This is not the place," my father hissed. "You can't do this to Madison." I'm not doing anything to Madison, I said. This is about what you and Mum have done to me, and to Alexander, for 30 years. Before he could respond, the wedding planner approached. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, we really need you for family photos now. The light is perfect. My father gave me a warning look before following the planner, my mother close behind, whispering furiously in his ear. I rejoined Alexander and Rachel, my sir, heart pounding. They know we're here. Mum tried to bribe me to leave. Alexander's expression hardened. Are you all right? Yes, just... Let's wait until after the photos and dinner. I don't want to ruin the actual celebration for Madison. We kept a low profile through the dinner service, seated at a table with distant acquaintances of the Williams family who didn't know me. I could feel my parents watching us tensely from the head table, my mother whispering to relatives, probably trying to control the damage. After dinner, the toasts began. My father stood to give his speech, praising Madison as the daughter every father dreams of, and congratulating himself on raising such a perfect young woman. Each word felt like a deliberate jab, reinforcing that I had never been considered worthy of such praise. As dancing began and the formal structure of the evening loosened, Alexander and I made our move. We approached the head table just as my parents were speaking with Jackson's parents, the perfect audience for the truth. Robert, Diana, Alexander said pleasantly. It's been a long time. My father froze mid-sentence. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Alexander, my father managed, his voice strangled. What a surprise? Indeed, Alexander agreed. Almost as surprising as discovering the daughter I was told never existed, or finding out my name has been used to perpetrate financial fraud for decades. Jackson's parents looked between us in confusion. Robert, what's going on? Jackson's father asked. You know Alexander Reed? It's complicated, George, my father said weakly. It's actually quite simple, I interjected. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Ellie Morgan, Madison's sister, the one who wasn't invited to the wedding, and my biological daughter, Alexander added, placing a hand on my shoulder. The shocked silence that followed was broken by the sound of heels approaching rapidly. Madison was striding toward us, Jackson close behind. Ellie? What are you doing? Here. Mom said you were too sick to come, Madison said, confusion evident on her face. That was their excuse? That I was sick? Not that they had deliberately excluded me? I'm not sick, Madison. I was told I wasn't welcome. Mum specifically said, we all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding. Madison's perfect bridal composure faltered. What? I never said that. I sent you an invitation. Now it was my turn to be confused. No, you didn't. I never received an invitation. I addressed it myself, Madison insisted. I gave it to Mom to mail with the others. All eyes turned to my mother, who was rapidly losing colour. Diana? My father questioned. Did you mail Ellie's invitation? My mother's silence was damning. Perhaps, Alexander said smoothly. This would be a good time to clear up a few other misunderstandings as well. For instance, the source of funding for this lovely wedding. Jackson's father frowned. What about the funding? Robert assured me everything was covered. Oh, it was covered, Alexander confirmed, with money from a trust established for Ellie, by her grandfather, money that was legally hers, but which Robert and Diana have been systematically embezzling for years. The accusation hung in the air like a thundercloud. My father began to sputter denials, but Alexander calmly produced a folder of documents he'd brought for exactly this purpose. Bank statements, trust documents, falsified correspondence. It's all here. Along with DNA test results confirming I am Ellie's biological father, a fact Diana concealed from me for 30 years while fabricating a story that I had abandoned my child. As the evidence was laid out, my grandmother appeared at the edge of our group, drawn by the commotion. Her eyes met mine, filled with resignation and sorrow. It's true, she said quietly, silencing my father's continued protests. All of it. Diana told Alexander she had terminated the pregnancy. She and Robert used Howard's trust fund meant for Ellie, claiming the money came from Alexander. They've been living on that money for years. Madison sank into a nearby chair, her perfect wedding day crumbling around her. You lied about Ellie not being invited. You spent her money on my wedding. Dad isn't even her real father. Jackson placed a protective hand on Madison's shoulder, his expression hardening as he looked at my parents. You told me Ellie declined the invitation because she was jealous of our relationship. You said she'd tried to cause problems between us. They've been saying things like that about me my entire life, I said sadly. It was easier to make me the villain than admit the truth. The reception had ground to a halt around us. Guests, sensing the drama unfolding, even if they couldn't hear the specifics. My mother finally broke her silence, her voice cold and brittle. You've had your revenge now, Ellie. Are you satisfied? You've ruined everything, just like you always do. Her words hung in the air, revealing more about our relationship than any evidence ever could. Even now, faced with the consequences of her own actions, she could only blame me. I didn't come for revenge, I said quietly. I came for the truth. Madison deserved to know who paid for her wedding. I deserved to know who my father is. Alexander deserved to know he has a daughter. The truth matters, Mom. As security approached, summoned by someone in the growing chaos, Alexander placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. I think we've accomplished what we came to do, he said softly. The truth is out. The rest can be handled through legal channels. I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the decades of emotions finally finding release. As we turned to leave, Madison called after me. Ellie, wait! She approached us, her wedding dress rustling, her perfect makeup now streaked with tears. I didn't know, she said, her voice breaking. I swear I didn't know any of this. I thought you got an invitation. I thought you just didn't want to come. Looking at her distress, I believed her. Madison had been as much a pawn in our parents' games as I had been, just on the favoured side of the equation. It's not your fault, I assured her. This isn't about you and me. It's about them and the choices they made long before either of us had any say. She nodded uncertainly. What happens now? Now, Alexander answered. There will be legal consequences for fraud and financial misappropriation. But that's between the adults involved. You two, he gestured between Madison and me, have an opportunity to build a relationship based on truth rather than manipulation. As we finally left the reception, with shocked whispers and stares following us, I felt a strange lightness. The secret that had shadowed my entire existence was finally exposed to the light. Whatever came next would at least be built on truth, not lies. 6 months after the wedding that imploded in spectacular fashion, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The immediate aftermath had been chaotic. Legal proceedings, family fallout, and media attention when the story of financial fraud involving Alexander Reed's name hit local business publications. My parents faced serious consequences for their actions. The fraud charges led to a settlement that required them to repay what they could of the misappropriated funds, sell their house, and face social humiliation as their carefully constructed image crumbled. My father's accounting firm placed him on indefinite leave when the financial improprieties came to light. They didn't go to jail, but their lives were irrevocably changed. Madison and Jackson's marriage survived the wedding day drama, though not without strain. They cancelled their honeymoon to Italy and spent that time instead processing the revelations about her family. Jackson was understandably angry about being deceived, particularly since his parents had contributed significantly to the wedding, based on false information about the Morgans' financial situation. About a month after the wedding, Madison reached out to me. We met at a neutral coffee shop, both of us nervous and uncertain. I've been thinking about our childhood, she said after we'd exchanged awkward greetings, and I'm starting to see things differently. The way they always gave me preference, the way they criticised you. I thought it was normal at the time. It was our normal, I acknowledged. Neither of us knew anything different. Madison twisted her wedding ring anxiously. I didn't know about the trust fund, or that they were using your money for my education, and the wedding. I would never have accepted that if I'd known. I believed her. Madison had been spoiled and entitled, yes, but she wasn't malicious. She'd been shaped by the same toxic family dynamic that had shaped me, just from the opposite perspective. I don't blame you, I told her honestly. You didn't create the situation. Still, she insisted, I benefited from it. I got the attention, the opportunities, the support, all at your expense. And I never questioned it. That conversation marked the beginning of a tentative rebuilding between us. Without our parents' influence poisoning our relationship, we discovered we actually had things in common. Madison had a sharp wit I'd never been allowed to see, and she was genuinely interested in my graphic design work, even commissioning me to create materials for a charity event she was organising. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Too many years of conditioning couldn't be overcome in months, but it was honest in a way it had never been before. We were getting to know each other as adults, without the distorted lens of our parents' manipulation. My relationship with Alexander developed rapidly. He introduced me to his wife Carolyn, who was shocked by the revelation that her husband had a daughter he'd never known about, but welcomed me warmly into their lives. Alexander always felt something was missing, she told me during our first meeting. Now I understand why. My half-siblings, Julian, Sophia, and Grace, embraced me with an enthusiasm that brought me to tears. We discovered shared traits, inside jokes, and common interests that made our connection feel natural despite the lost years. It's like finding a missing puzzle piece, Sophia said one evening as we discovered we had the same peculiar habit of organising our coloured pencils by temperature rather than spectrum. Professionally, my life improved dramatically as well. Alexander, true to his word about wanting to support me, introduced me to contacts in the design world that opened doors I'd been knocking on unsuccessfully for years. I was careful not to take advantage of these connections, wanting to succeed on my own merits, but the opportunities to showcase my work led to a flourishing freelance business that eventually allowed me to leave my agency job and work independently. My grandmother Margaret was the family member I struggled most to forgive. She had known the truth all along, but had kept the secret, watching me suffer the consequences of my parents' deception. I was trying to protect everyone, she explained tearfully when we finally discussed it. Diana was so young when she got pregnant. Howard, your grandfather, was determined that the family's reputation wouldn't be damaged. He set up the trust, but insisted the situation be handled quietly. But after grandfather died, you could have told me the truth then. She looked down at her hands. By then, the lie had been in place for so long, I told myself it would do more harm than good to reveal it. I was wrong, Ellie. I was a coward, and you paid the price for my cowardice. Her genuine remorse helped me begin the process of forgiving her, though our relationship would never be quite the same. The legal proceedings resulted in the recovery of what remained of my trust fund, a fraction of what should have been mine, but still substantial enough to provide financial security I'd never experienced. Alexander insisted on establishing an additional trust for me, equal to what he'd provided for my half-siblings. I can't replace the years we lost, he said when I protested, but I can ensure you have the same opportunities they had going forward. 6 months to the day after Madison's wedding, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner in my new apartment, a spacious 2-bedroom in a historic building that I'd been able to purchase with my recovered funds. Around my table sat Alexander and Carolyn, Julian, Sophia, Grace, Rachel, my grandmother, and, somewhat surprisingly, Madison. Jackson was with his family in Vermont, giving Madison space to navigate this new family dynamic without his hovering concern. She arrived with a bottle of wine and a genuine hug. "Is this weird?" she asked as she helped me in the kitchen. "Having Thanksgiving with your new family and... well, me?" "A little," I admitted. "But good weird. Honest weird." As we gathered, around the table I looked at the faces surrounding me. Some I'd known my entire life, others I was just getting to know. This was my chosen family now, built on truth rather than obligation. After dinner, Madison pulled me aside. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened and why our parents did what they did. And," I prompted when she paused, "I think they were so invested in appearing perfect that they couldn't handle anything that threatened that image. Your existence, your biological connection to Alexander rather than Dad, was a crack in their perfect facade. So they tried to minimize you, to keep you in the shadows." Her insight surprised me. "That actually makes a lot of sense." "The irony is," Madison continued, "their desperation to keep up appearances ultimately caused the public humiliation they were trying to avoid." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself standing with Alexander by the window, watching the first snowflakes of the season drift past the streetlights. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when your mother told me she'd terminated the pregnancy, it broke something in me. I moved forward with my life, married Carolyn, had my family, but there was always a shadow, a sense of loss I couldn't explain. And now?" I asked. "Now I understand what was missing," he said simply. "It was you." The validation in those 3 words healed something deep within me, the part that had always wondered if there was something inherently unlovable about me that made my family reject me. Later, as I cleared the last dishes, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. Being excluded from Madison's wedding had felt like the ultimate rejection at the time, but it had been the catalyst that led me to discover my true identity and find a family that genuinely wanted me. Sometimes the most painful moments in our lives turn out to be doorways to something better. Had I been invited to that wedding, I might have continued in the same pattern for years, seeking approval from people who were constitutionally incapable of giving it, never knowing the truth about my origins or my inheritance. As I placed the last wineglass in the dishwasher, Madison appeared with a stack of plates. "I keep thinking about what you said at the wedding," she told me. "That you didn't come for revenge, you came for the truth. I didn't understand then, but I think I do now." She placed the dishes on the counter and turned to face me directly. "Truth is the foundation everything else is built on. Our parents built their lives and ours on lies, and look how fragile it all turned out to be." I nodded, touched by her insight. The truth can be painful, but living a lie is ultimately more destructive. As Madison left and I finished cleaning up, I thought about how differently this Thanksgiving had felt from any family gathering in my memory. There had been no tension, no walking on eggshells, no carefully maintained facades, just genuine connection and the beautiful messiness of real human relationships. My phone pinged with a message from Alexander. "Thank you for today. Family dinner at our house next month? The kids insist." The simple text brought tears to my eyes. For so long, I had been the unwanted one, the outsider looking in. Now I was included, welcomed, valued. If you've ever felt like the outcast in your own family, like you're constantly trying to earn love that should be freely given, know that you're not alone. Sometimes family is defined by blood, but more often it's defined by choice, by the people who see you clearly and love you anyway. Sometimes the family you create for yourself is more genuine than the one you were born into. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you in any way, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family truths and transformations. I'd love to know in the comments if you've ever discovered a family secret that changed your understanding of yourself, or if you've had to create boundaries with toxic family members. Has karma ever caught up with someone? Who wronged you? How did you handle it? Remember, while revenge might be temporarily satisfying, truth and authenticity are what truly set us free. The best form of justice often isn't about making others pay, but about creating a life so full and genuine that the past loses its power over you. Until next time, this is Ellie Reed. Yes, I legally changed my name, wishing you truth, healing, and the courage to write your own story, even when others try to write it for you.